Okay. Hi to my 28 subscribers. Okay. We're going to do a random book drawing. Okay. Beethoven's Letters. Let me see that. Maybe I should rewrite them in a darker pen so you can see them. Okay. Books are falling everywhere. Okay. Falling off from the bookshelf. Okay. Beethoven's Letters. Beethoven's Letters with explanatory notes by Dr. A.C. Calliser. Okay. The back says, Beethoven's Letters, Ludwig van Beethoven, 1770 to 1827, the protagonist of freedom for music, disentangled music from the control of the ruling class. In publishing his music and writing for the rising classes, Beethoven claimed freedom and expressed the emotions of the new rulers, the artists. The Aurora Fidelio and the piano works express the emotions of the new rulers, the intense love, the need for companionship of people, the forces that conspired to defeat the artists, and the strength and superiority of the artists in overcoming the weaknesses. The letters of Beethoven are the principal non-musical expression of his personality in its relationship with the world of its time. In what he called the dry letters of the alphabet, Beethoven depicted his fears, his loves, and his friendly relations, his fears of deafness and of corrupted texts by pirating printers, his loves Bettina, Brentano, and Julietta. I'm butchering these names. Guicciardi. Guicciardi. And his friendly relations with Baron Zimzikal, Frau Nanette, Streicher, and the music publishers, Steiner and Company. He praises the poetry of Goethe, Goethe, and Schiller, but condemns Goethe for his obeisance towards the royalty. Obeisance. He solicits his help during his perpetual trouble with his health and with his servants. His castigates publishers, sets prices for his works, and calculates letters of dedication. He expresses his love for his nephew Karl, but documents the trouble that Karl was causing him through taking up his precious time. Time was of the essence, and although Beethoven liked to decorate the letters with musical openings and closings, and in an occasional song to the receiver. He increasingly signed his letters in haste. The 457 letters collected here are the most important of the letters of the Spirit that was to shape and move a century. Explanatory notes comment upon works, on persons mentioned, and on the puns of which Beethoven was fond. The letters chronicle his business, his needs, his humor and bitterness, and his philosophy. They will give many insights into Beethoven's methods, his influences, his moods, and the conditions under which the master worked. Unabridged republication of the 1926 edition. Explanatory notes by Dr. Calliser, translation and preface by J.S. Shedlock. Selected and edited by A. Eaglefield Hull. Indexes of persons and works. A Dover edition designed for years of use. We have made every effort to make this the best book possible. Our paper is opaque with minimal show through. It will not discolor or become brittle with age. Pages are shown in signatures in the method traditionally used for the best books and will not drop out, as often happens with paperbacks held together with glue. Books open flat for easy reference. The binding will not crack or split. This is a permanent book. Okay. Beethoven at the age of 49, 1819. There's a picture of Beethoven, age 49. Introduction. Mr. Shedlock's English tradition of Dr. Calliser's complete collection of Beethoven's letters has now unfortunately been out of print for many years. I therefore willingly accepted the publisher's proposal for a handier and less expensive form of this work, to be brought about by a selection of those letters which, bearing more particularly on music of Beethoven or more directly on his character, are of great interest to the general lover of music. Having first sought the approval of Mr. Shedlock's I have no idea how to say that. Executrix, Mrs. Manning, I immediately availed myself of some corrections which Mr. Shedlock sent me some years ago for another work. The present selection is one volume, is a book for the general reader, rather than for the musical researcher and historian. I feel sure that every music lover who has not Dr. Calliser's German collection, 1,220 letters, will be thankful for this condensation, which contains all that is most valuable as a searchlight on the music and the character of Beethoven. A. Eaglefield Hull. Okay, the preface or preface, however you want to say it. This appears to be the special task of biography, to present the man in relation to his times, and to show how far as a whole they are opposed to him, and how far they are favorable to him, and how, if he be an artist, poet, or writer, he reflects them outwardly. Thus wrote Goethe in his Wort and Undichtung. I have no idea how to say it. WAHRHEIT UNDDICHTUNG. And as regards Beethoven, His letters offer a unique biography for studying the man in relation to his times, while such works as the Eroica, Eroica, and choral, Choral, symphonies certainly reflect them outwardly. We also see clearly from his letters how deeply he was affected by the times. He did not suddenly decide to write a work and dedicate it to Napoleon, for that was his original intention with respect to the Eroica, nor did he suddenly think the Schiller Ode to Joy would be a fine poem to set to music. But the one work was the outcome of the strong sympathy with the man whom he thought was about to establish a republican millennium. The other of ardent desire for peace and goodwill to reign upon earth. Rickart tells us of the ideals after which men were aiming at the end of the 18th century. The victories of the Republican armies specially impressed Beethoven soon after his arrival in Vienna, for his native country suffered thereby, while the Ode to Joy of Schiller, though the setting was a late one, occupied his thoughts from a very early period. Of the horrors of war he had personal experience. In 1801, we find him taking part in a concert for the benefit of the wounded Austrian soldiers at the Battle of Hanou. In 1805, Vienna was occupied by French troops, and again in 1809, the city of Vienna was bombarded and then occupied by Napoleon. The events of 1805 were unfavorable to the success of his opera Fidelio, while those of 1809 greatly worried him. What a disturbing wildlife all around me. Nothing but drums, cannons, men, misery of all sorts. So he writes in a graphic letter to his publishers, Breitkopf and Hartel, 26 July 1809. How far these and other events may have interfered with his art creations is difficult to determine, but the great works which he produced were surely in part owing to the excitement of those times. Had Beethoven lived a quiet, peaceful life, such as that of Haydn at Estoraz, it is very doubtful whether we should now possess the Eroica, C minor, and the later symphonies. Much could be said about Beethoven and the times in which he lived, and many quotations could be given from the letters. But for the moment, we wish to say something about them as showing what kind of a man he was. In these letters, we get at the very heart of the composer, and his thoughts and feelings are expressed in strong, characteristic terms, yet quite naturally. From their general character, one is convinced that Beethoven had absolutely no thought of their ever being published. For the most part, they are anything but models of style, yet, and not unfrequently, there are sentences which seem, as it were, inspired. A few have been often quoted. Here is one less familiar. In letter 254, he writes to his friend and helper, Nanette Streiter, who is at Baden. If you go to the old ruins, think that Beethoven lingered there. If you wandered through the mysteries, fir forests, think it was there Beethoven often poetized, or as it is called, composed. By reading Berlioz'